In a sec. Hi guys, it's Oli from Rad Season. I'm excited to be joined today by the World Surf League commentator, the voice of professional surfing, Joe Turpel.
Oli, so good to see you. Thanks so much for having me on Rad Season.
Thanks, man. Thanks for coming on the show. Whereabouts are you at the moment, Joe?
I am on the north shore of Oahu, right by that wave called Rocky Point, and it's just been hanging out. It's a nice little part of the world, pretty simple, pretty laid back. So not a whole lot has changed.
All right, and I guess it would be great to go back to where did it all begin for you? Where did you grow up?
I grew up. Well, I was born in California in a place called San Dimas. I couldn't tell you how to get there. We didn't stay there very long. My family moved to Oahu when I was about 6 years old, and then stayed here until I was about 13, and then moved to California once again, and then stayed there until about 5 years ago. So I sort of had this back and forth from California and Hawaii, and finished all my high school, college in California. Started living in San Clemente, Santa Barbara, moving up and down the California coast, and then now I'm back here in Hawaii. So we'll see where we end up next.
Oh, good. And where did you begin to surf? Was that over in Hawaii, or was it over growing up in California?
It was all in Hawaii, yeah. So when I was about 6 or 7, my dad would take my sister and I down to Waikiki. And he would get us into waves, and gosh, Waikiki is so special for so many reasons. Being the birthplace of surfing, you see the Duke statue, all the Beach Boys, and my dad had learned to surf when he lived in Hawaii when he was a kid. So he was passing it down to my sister and I, and it was funny when you're a kid, you have all these things you want to do. You want to play with your friends outside, and my dad would be like, "Come on, you guys, let's get down to the beach." You're like 6, 7, 8, and he's just like, "I'll pay you $0.25 for every wave you catch." And then I'd be like, "All right, guys, I gotta go. I gotta go make some money." And he would give us all these quarters at the end of the session, and we'd use all of our quarters and go like buy ourselves a cheeseburger. And it was like really satisfying thinking I caught these waves and now I bought myself lunch,
That's awesome. And would you your dad was in show business, is that right?
He was, yeah. He's one of those guys that did like a ton of things. So he was attracted to the ocean. He was a lifeguard for many years, but there was a period of time when I was real young, kind of like when I was about until 5 years of age. He was working at Universal Studios. So even before I was born, he had about a 13, 14-year career at Universal, and he was a stuntman for the A-Team live action show. Did a bunch of stuff. Even did 10 episodes on The Young and the Restless, and Weber barbecue commercials. So he was kind of in that Hollywood business for quite some time. And yeah, did almost everything you could maybe in that category as well, from even a little bit of broadcast work in television, working at some networks, to writing spots and voiceovers for radio stations. And I think his favorite, though, was definitely the A-Team live action show at Universal Studios, hosting the show, and then he would jump off this huge tower shooting an M16 at the bad guys. That was always fun to look back on.
That's cool. And would you say, like, was he definitely an influence on on what you're currently doing now and your career path?
Oh, massive. The cool part about it was, I think that he always liked too, is it wasn't like, hey, this is what you should do. I was attracted to it on my own and really focused on a surfing broadcast, even a sports commentary style. My dad wasn't the biggest sports fan in the world, and even with his surfing life, he didn't know who was who. He just rode waves. Maybe the purest soul surfer you could imagine. But once I got into it and I began getting in my first couple of broadcasts, yeah, he sent me an email. I was in Brazil, and he said, "I think I can help you with this," and he just started. Every time I'd have a day on the job, I would leave going, "I think I did all right." And I get an email, and I was like, "Ooh, maybe I didn't," like it was really helpful, like to have that kind of feedback from someone I obviously trust, and someone that was really, really ready to celebrate any success I had. So it was amazing to have that. I got so used to it. I'd get off the day and I'd be like, where's the email? Like, what did I do wrong? I wanted to like get better so badly that every note that he gave me was really precious.
That's cool. And I guess so did you finish high school over in California or?
Yes. So I moved there right in 8th grade, so the year before high school, and went to a school called Elisa Niguel. That's in Orange County. And closest beach to there is probably Salt Creek Beach Park down there in Southern California. Finished there 4 years, and then went to college in LA for a couple of years, and then college in Santa Barbara. So that began once we left Hawaii when I was about 13. You know, I didn't come back for a very long time, just till 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah. Cool. And when did you start on with the commentating on surfing then? So that was that.
Yeah, that was must have been 2006. At the end of that year, I'd finished my degree at UC Santa Barbara, and we had a college surf team that would compete up and down the California coast. And there was always like a live beach announcer there, and he was always so funny. He was really cool, and I was like, I kept thinking I wanted to do that. And so I was up in school, and in between our contests we were competing in, our friends and I would free surf in front of the house we looked at. And I was just doing these mock commentary days with our friends. And I was joking with them all the time. I was like, I'm going to call the Pipe Masters one day. But I really didn't believe that. I was just saying it. I was like, yeah, I'm going to call the Pipe Masters one day. And we'd get little recordings. I was calling their waves, just like those early webcasts of hearing Martin Potter and John Schmuka in the early days. And I just went to NSSA and I was like, hey, do you guys need someone to do this? And they said, well, we're not really sure what's going to come out of your mouth yet. We just kind of met you. So why don't you come back in the fall and we'll see what goes on. And I was like, all right, that's awesome. Months went by. I got an email from them. They're like, are you still ready to do this? And I did the first event. It was in Huntington. I remember the waves were great. And I remember it was the first time I was going to the beach and the waves were really good and I wasn't surfing. I was like talking about it, you know? And I remember that experience was really trippy for me. I was like, wait, I'm not surfing. I'm going to watch it all day. And, but I was so jazzed to be a part of it and actually get to try something that I really wanted to do for a long time. And once I did that event, they said, okay, you've got the whole season. You can plan on being here all the weekends of the Southwest Open season. And that was really where it all kicked off.
Awesome. And then from there, then did you like when was the first CT? Was that Brazil or?
That was Brazil. Yeah. So the first CT, so I started the NSSA Open season. It was 06-07 year. And so they had a national championships in June of that year. And I got a message from Billabong, and they're like, would you want to go to Brazil? It was a standalone women's event up in Bahia. And that was going to be my first official webcast, this women's event. That was around Rosie, Steph Gilmore's rookie season on tour. And I remember going, okay, this is a big step from going from beach announcing to actually being in a TV broadcast. And I'll never forget how nervous I was getting on the plane. I was just like, here we go. Like, this is what I've always wanted to do, but I still couldn't believe I was getting on the plane to go do it. So that was an event I'll never forget.
That's awesome. And I mean, you've been on the tour, like, so that was so it's 2007. So, you know, like over a decade, there's got to be, is there any sort of crazy moments that stand out as something that you remember?
Thinking about that first event, I think for me too, like I grew up, I wasn't getting on planes all the time. I had a trip I planned with my friends to Costa Rica. I'd go to Mexico across the border from California, but like going to Brazil and not really knowing where to go, kind of pre-iPhone era for myself at least, and just kind of going, okay, here's my itinerary. Let's go to this beach and figure out where it is. And so I remember just landing in Brazil, which was probably one of the craziest landings in an airplane I've ever had to this day. That first trip, we took this small airplane from Sao Paulo to Ilhéus, and it felt like the plane fell out of the sky. It just dropped onto the landing strip. Like your bag was not above you. It was about 20 rows ahead. My buddy had just got this big international phone. It flew out of his hands. He never found it again. And we crawled off that plane, got this like pickup truck ride for like over an hour to where the beach was, called Itakare. And I remember getting there, but I didn't know like where I was supposed to go. So I stayed up all night worried that I was going to miss this like place where I was going to go. I didn't have the right charger for my phone. And I ended up waking up at like 6 going, well, surf contests start early. I was walking down this dirt road. I finally found the scaffolding, and back then things were pretty laid back. I think they had their first call scheduled at like 10:30 in the morning. So I was just standing by waiting at this scaffolding, trying to ask people questions like, where is everybody? Eventually the event started. I was running on fumes. Hadn't slept, just got in. But I think my adrenaline was helping me just stay alert. And my dad always referenced that day because he was listening, and he was like, great job. And I was like, really? I feel delirious. And he was just he was telling me how cool that was to bring something out of you, and on the inside maybe you're fighting to stay awake.
That's awesome. And yeah. I guess from there, I mean, then now everything is pretty familiar, right? I mean, like going back to the same, like all the same locations and on what is now the Dream Tour. I mean, is there any spot or any place that you love going back to?
Yeah,
I mean, they're pretty good, but over the other ones, what would be your pick?
It's such an interesting question, because there's definitely, I think when you do it for a while, there's some events that pop out where you get great waves in Portugal and you're like, oh, I think Portugal is my favorite that year. And then going to Fiji is unbelievable. It's like the cartoon paradise. And going there, just even arriving, you feel like you're dreaming. So there's a lot of events that you could pick because they all offer so many different things. Some people are like, no, what is your favorite? But I have favorites for different reasons, because Australia is so comfortable. It's so easy for me to travel there. Reminds me a lot of California. Everything's on the coast. I love the lifestyle and the culture. And then I go to Jeffreys Bay, and it's really far away from Hawaii. And the right-hand point break is a wave that I love so dearly. Going that fast on a wave and having it being a bit more affordable when you're around eating food and going on safaris, that when you go to a venue like that, you feel like you've taken a true journey across the world. Fiji's got that surfing paradise, and then Europe's got this really old school culture. So it's hard to define one, but I think every year there's one or two that stand out as your favorite trip that year, depending on how many great waves you got, maybe the adventures you had outside of the booth. But my favorite event on tour to call, as far as the job, that always goes to the Pipe Masters. It's just the end of the season. The wave is unbelievable just to watch, first of all. But when careers are on the line, a world title's on the line, that energy you feel from the crowd in that live call is second to none. So that one's always easy for me to pick. Best one to call, Pipe Masters, hands down. But I think as far as the travel and the experience, they all offer so many different things that when you put them all together, it truly is living the dream.
That's awesome. And is there any standout year from Pipe looking back? I mean,
going back, you reminded me of those early days. I remember like the first Pipe Masters I called, and the nerves I had in the butterflies, just like going up the tower. The tower, or our booth used to be on the top shelf, like the third story, and the view is so incredible. And I remember I was going to call my first tee at the Pipe Masters, and it just felt so surreal, walking up the scaffolding, looking out the window and seeing pipe and backdoor firing. And I was just beside myself. It was like an out-of-body experience, walking up the stairs going, I'm actually calling the Pipe Masters, and this is what I talked about with my friends back in college, that I might do this one day. I didn't really realize it was going to happen, especially that quickly.
That's amazing. And now, I mean, you travel for a living, and like obviously with the circumstances of what's happening at the moment, and not being able to go. I mean, what have you been up to in Hawaii? What have you been doing in the downtime?
Great question. Yeah, so when everything started changing, I was in Australia. I was in Manly, where we hung out before at the Sydney Surf Pro. We finished that finals day, and Leo Fioravanti, Carissa Moore won. And then the message was going out that day that, Snapper would be canceled. And the next event I was going to go to on the QS, the Challenger Series, was New Zealand. And that was going to be canceled or postponed. And so when we got that information, it was sort of like, okay, what do we do now? Like, is this, at that time, it was like, is this going to be like a week thing, or is this going to be, a month? It was just so hard to tell at the time. So we stayed in Australia with some friends for about a week, and then decided that we probably should get back to Hawaii because they were, stopping some of the flights. And so we got back home, kind of just stayed in our little bubble for about a month without seeing like anybody, not even the neighbors. And then slowly started emerging back on the beach and kept our little bubble close to our neighborhood. So just beach back and forth all day long. We were lucky to have some insane waves late season on the North Shore, which was incredible. Mm-hmm. April was one of the best Aprils I've seen. And I'm saying seen, not surfed, because I ended up tearing the labrum in my shoulder. Terrible timing to do that. But I had to watch that from the sidelines. And then thank goodness May had some surf, and I got myself back in the water, and I was rehabbing my shoulder. So I kept myself busy with getting my shoulder back in action, and then eventually surfing, being in the water, going on hikes to these local mountains right here. And every day was pretty simple, making food, hanging with the family, like every single day on repeat.
And were you with your family this year then? Like, I'm over in Australia, because I remember when we met you, like you were going to be traveling with your family again, and yeah.
So they were with me. They were hanging with me this year, and we were planning on going to Snapper together and doing like maybe even the drive up from Manly. We always loved driving from Sydney to the Gold Coast, mm-hmm. kind of stopping, surfing along the way, seeing friends, and then getting the year kicked off. So we were all ready to do that all over again, which was kind of tough walking away from, but it was just such a unprecedented time. We just were like, okay, I guess we'll go home, but we were definitely ready to be like, well, we could stay put here easily. We got everyone we need. So we ended up getting back and settling down into the whole rhythm of wondering what was going to happen in the world, like everybody else.
Yeah. And with the events, I mean, do you sort of see, I guess, anything on tour, like whether they do like a virtual or an online version, like, like they're doing with some of the other like action sports and some of the other events? Is that
right? Yeah, the team has been working insanely on ideas, and obviously just the whole safety thing is first. And I think the big issue, obviously being a global sport, is like the travel part. If travel's hard, you can't run events, or if it's unsafe, that's the first thing. So we've been getting some incredible updates every month, kind of seeing the status of the year. And now it's leading up to a decision in about 2 weeks, early July. Right. There's going to be another call on what will happen for the rest of the year. And so those meetings are, I think they're really interesting, because they have to think about points. They have to think about, the value of that world title in the back half of the year. I did notice how Snapper was canceled, but then everything after that just says postponed. So I think it gave the tour some room to maybe be able to shift things around if they could, to get something going. So I know there are some sports that are getting back underway, like the NBA made an announcement they're starting. They do also have the benefit of closed stadiums and also being in the same country. So in our global sport, there's just a little extra effort that has to be involved, one, to do the events, but also to ensure safety and the big issue of travel and being able to get into these countries. If that opens up, I could see something happening. If not, they might just have some really cool regional events to look forward to. But I feel like this next announcement in July will have a pretty good idea on what's going to be happening this year. Okay.
Yeah, I guess it's always on like everyone's mind, and like the first thing that has to be is safety, and if people, like as you're saying, like people are traveling from all over the world to.
And I think that the final thing, it was like with all those questions and the cool part is our CEO is really transparent. And so he's not afraid to say, we don't know yet. And that was it's a fair statement, because the world is in this shifting pattern of we still have to wait and see. And obviously safety first of the athletes, of fans, of everybody, and they'll go from there. So it'll be cool that this next call to see if we just jump right back into it and begin this excitement of the title race, or if they delay it more. I'm not really sure. The one announcement that I loved a few months back, Ollie, I don't know if you saw that, was the new format for next year, which seems really cool with the CT starting as early as January 2021.
Okay.
A separate season, the CT having its own spotlight, and then the qualifying series having its own spotlight. So they won't overlap anymore. You'll have a championship tour world title race that'll finish, and then a separate year with the Challenger Series heavyweight events to qualify. Will have this whole driving force of people watching it and knowing those storylines of those QS warriors that are looking to get a spot on tour.
That's cool. And is there going to be different numbers with that? It can like more people qualify, or like...
Good question. I haven't received those details, but I'm sure we'll hear about that soon. Because think about it, man, January is going to come up before we know it. But yeah, I bet with those changes, I'm sure it's going to come up with a little format tweaks here and there. And I think the WSL is taking advantage of this time to have this downtime where there's always events running, where they could focus on, this whole brand new world tour revamp that's going to happen pretty soon.
And is that still going to be starting off in Australia in January?
Good question. Yeah, I'm not quite sure about that either. Yeah.
Hopefully we'll find out in a couple of weeks when they do that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to be checking those posts as well.
Cool, man. And if there was somewhere on your bucket list that you've been meaning to go, either to surf or just a place to visit, that's not on the tour, where would that be?
Gosh, there's so many, actually. For me personally, on a surf trip, I have never done a Mentawais boat trip ever. So that feels like it's like looming in the back of my mind. Like, I can't believe I haven't done that. But so that one is high on the list. I've always been attracted to the waves in Chile, like in South America, long laps. I'm a regular footer, but it just seems like a really dreamy location, really different, a little colder water, but I've always wanted to go there. Those two really stand out to me as places I have to go. The boat trip, that's got to happen soon. I can't wait to do that. And then somewhere in South America, like a Chile vibe, sounds really fun right now.
Awesome, cool, man. And do you when you go to the CT events, do you get a chance to surf, I guess, on down days, or even sort of at the end of the day, or before heats? Is that something that you do,
yeah,
or you just be focusing on the job at hand?
Totally. Every event has a little different feel on how many times you actually get to surf. There's some events where the main part of the swell is all we have to finish the event, and so you'll be sometimes taking home a board bag you didn't get to open. That happened to me in Tahiti 2 years ago. The whole team, we got in at night. The only swell was like the first 3 days of the waiting period, and we were finishing the event in a dying swell. The next day there was nothing left, and it was time to fly home. So I literally didn't even unzip my bag to set up the boards I brought that year. That was a bit rare. That doesn't happen every year, thank goodness. But there's some events like years in Tahiti where there's a lot of lay days. There's other reef passes around, and if you have access to a jet ski or a boat, you're surfing every day. And those events are really awesome because you are waiting for waves, but you actually get to dive into it and surf a bit and enjoy that whole experience. So those are always the best. But usually if it's game day, I'm not really surfing before because we're up in the dark in our meetings. Yeah. And if it's on a day that we're on, once they call it off, that's when it opens it up to, oh shoot, swell's filling in, we're out there. And there's a lot of spots that guys are warming up and the women are warming up to compete. And I'm always trying to find the spot like just around all that warm up energy to just go free surf without that huge competition vibe around it. So like J-Bay, even the long point break, everyone's at supers warming up, but it's a long point break. So you can go below or above and surf with the commentary crew. So that's nice.
Awesome. Cool, man. And is there anything that you're you're working on at the moment, or any goals sort of that you want to focus on?
Yeah, it's interesting, just even with having a chance to look at your life, in the personal aspect outside from the job, and having this time to look at it. For me, it's always trying to like improve my health and fitness. North Shore of Oahu goes pretty flat this time of year because it's our summertime. Yeah. So I got a mountain bike yesterday that just came in. I'm going to try to dive into that whole journey. I am a complete beginner, have no idea what I'm doing, but a buddy of mine talked me into it, and a bunch of my neighbors are always going up the hills at Pupukea. And so I'm going to try to dive into a nice program of riding bikes and also being a better dad. My daughter's 3, and she turned 3 2 days ago. And it's as she's 3, it's crazy to see how quickly that happened, and how I still feel like I have no idea what I'm doing. So it's you become a new dad, and you're just right into it, and all of a sudden, like, she's 3, and I'm like, wow, I just want to be better for her, and set her up to have the best life she possibly could have. So that's what's been a gift for me this time, of not getting on a plane, not jumping anywhere else, and waking up and starting the day with my daughter has been a blessing.
That's cool. Has she been on a board yet? Have you got a?
I'm not trying to force that whole thing. So she's just in a stage where she is enjoying the water a lot. So she doesn't really like to put her head under that much, and I'm not trying to force her to do it. So she's in this natural little rhythm of watching kids around her, like swimming a bit more. And so she'll wait. We went to Waimea for her birthday, and it's completely flat, and it just has this little push of a shore break that she can gently just jump into and kind of body surf onto the sand. And I was just so proud of her. She was just keeping her head up above the water, like rolling up on the sand, and she did it like 1,000 times. And so I'm liking to see, I like her progress of where it's at, where she's comfortable with, because the last thing I want is for her to have like a scary day and not want to go back. So I'm just letting her kind of call her shots with her progress in the ocean. And right now it's insane amount of fun. So that's really cool.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
Well, good stuff, dude. Well, if anyone wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way?
Yeah, if anyone wants to talk, I'm on Instagram. I don't post as much as I used to, but I check it, frequently. That's just at Joe Turpel. And I think I'm on Facebook too. I don't check that as much. So Instagram's probably the best way to go. At Joe Turpel, you can send me a message there, and we can chat for sure.
Awesome. Cool, man. Well, Joe, it's been great chatting to you, dude. And hopefully look forward to hearing from you when the events start again, and we'll see where we go with the announcement.
Awesome, Oli. Thanks so much for having me. So great to see you as well. And I think in a couple of weeks we'll have a better idea of what's going to happen this year. I hope so. We've had a lot of calls, so I'm ready. Maybe I'm just amping. Hopefully July we'll get back into some heats, or at least know the game plan. That'd be great.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe.
Cheers, Oli.
Cheers.